Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist with degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy, and a national certification in integrative mental health. In this video, I'm not looking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. All right, these were not just Germanic tribes. Oh, let me fix this. They weren't just pale warriors with thick skulls, swords, and runes. They were the first elite caste, and their descendants still rule today, and I'm going to prove it. They came from the north, tall, pale, and skull strong. And unlike the people they conquered, they didn't want to mix. They wanted to preserve. This is the story of the Goths and the case for their Neanderthal origin, their genetic anomalies, and their obsession with bloodline control. But before I get into it, let me say hi to some folks. Auntie is here first. Hi, my favorite Auntie with the peace sign. Hi, Auntie. Adrian says, let's go. Adric says, it's on. And hashtag pivot point Wednesday. Time flies. Yes. And let's hear it for the dancing Maggies. Rome is burning. It's going to burn now. And honestly, if I had to say which episode I'm more concerned about getting my channel taken down, if I had to compare this one to the Goths or to the Khazarians, this one actually will cause me more trouble. And the one next weekend is going to be the one that'll cause me a lot of trouble because it has Hitler in the title. So I'm just going to keep pushing my luck. And hi to everybody watching from the clouds. Hi to the replay gang. Feel free to join us here at the Best Live Tribe on YouTube. So you will see scrolling across the bottom, receipts, because if I'm going to say the wild and crazy things I'm going to say, I'm going to give you some receipts to go look at. This is not all inclusive though. I have a lot of information. Okay. So let's talk about the Neanderthals, okay? Because the Neanderthals, long before the rise of the Homo sapiens, were the dominant species in Europe. So their extinction is not a disappearance. They felt like it was a displacement. Their interbreeding didn't just mix their DNA, it transferred some trauma. So this fear of extinction, this aggression for survival, this obsession with hierarchy, and this bloodline generational memory of loss, of not being king of the hill. And that became the psychology of the Neanderthals. For anybody new, I have tons of notes in front of me. So if you see me looking down or turning pages, it's because if I don't have notes, I won't stay on track. Okay. So I'm going to prove this stuff today, okay? The Goths, the Vandals, the Visigoths, and the Ostrogoths all emerged out of Eastern and Northern Europe, regions with the highest Neanderthal DNA today, okay? All non-African humans carry less than 1% to maybe high range is 2% of Neanderthal DNA. It's in there for non-African humans. Okay. Now, non-African humans doesn't just mean, well, we'll get into that when we talk about Hitler. Okay. So populations in Northern and Eastern Europe, where they were, carry the highest concentrations. Regions like Scandinavia, Poland, remember that, and Germany, homelands of the Goths, this was their homelands, are all the DNA hotspots, okay? Up to 30%. So a third pure Neanderthal. Okay. So Neanderthals had long, flat skulls, strong brow ridges. You've seen that on people where it looks like their eyebrows kind of come out a little bit, and really stocky builds. That's Neanderthals. Gothic remains from the Maslow culture, the Chernyakov culture show a tall height, dolichocephalic skulls, and strong jawlines. It's the same skulls. Okay. These skeletal patterns diverge from the Homo sapien norms and align closely with the Neanderthal admixture. Okay. So, same skulls, and their homelands have the highest amount of DNA. Okay. So, they weren't just warriors, they were, these Neanderthals were ritualistic. They were bloodline conscious already, they were gene conscious and obsessed with purity. The Gothic tribes were endogamous, so they only married from within, they only reproduced from within. Adrian, I totally forgot to pull that picture. Dang it. I may have to find it here in a sec just to show it. Actually, everybody give me a moment because it's just too good not to show. Maybe Adrian, you can send me a fresh one so that I don't have to go searching for it because I totally forgot to pull it. That's so funny. But you guys may even know what I'm talking about. That image with Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Neanderthal woman, because Marjorie Taylor Greene has that dolichocephalic skull. She has that protruding brow ridge. She's got all of that. And so this picture was of a Neanderthal woman right next. Oh, I found it. Yep, found it. Now I wonder if I can do a share screen. Let's see. No. Okay, I'm gonna have to do it different. Ugh. I hate that when you really want to share something on I wonder if I can do it this way. I'm sorry, guys. I should have had it ready, but you really have to see it because it really brings home what I'm talking about when I describe. Okay. I'll pull it up on Reddit. There we go. So this will work. Okay. That's what it is. Okay. Oh, okay, Adrian, you said it. Yeah. Okay. So that's what we're talking about, being skull strong and having that dolichocephalic skulls, right? And the strong jawlines. These are the Neanderthals and the Goths. They all have the same exact skull shapes. Okay. But isn't that uncanny? Okay. So the Neanderthals, where was I at? Okay, the Gothic tribes were endogamous, right? They married within clans and tribes. They did not mix with the Homo sapiens, other hominids, the Denisovans. They never wanted to mix. So from day one, the Neanderthals were very much about their purity. After conquering Roman territories, the Goths adopted titles like Rex for king and began immediately recording their genealogies. Okay. The Visigoths and the Ostrogoths married into the Roman imperial families, not for love, but for that legacy. Right. So we've talked about how the fall of Rome was not the fall of Rome. The Goths overtook Rome and then immediately created the Holy Roman Empire. So that's not the fall of Rome, it's the rebrand. The bad built butch body. Bleach blonde, bad built butch body. I remembered that when or I memorized that. So this pattern of bloodline consolidation mimics later royal behaviors, like what the Habsburgs did, what the Merovingians, oh, that one's hard, that interbreeding, right, to maintain a pure bloodline. The Neanderthals showed ritual behavior, territorial behavior, and signs of rank-based groupings. And the Goths, in the same vein, built stratified warrior societies, protected aristocratic warrior classes, and developed early systems of noble descent and land inheritance. So we now have the DNA in all of those places, in all of the places that became these imperialist, colonialist, committing the worst atrocities and genocides, have the highest amount of Neanderthal blood. They came from the Goths and they act like the Goths. I'm going to get deeper into this and prove it even more. It's not just, hey, it's quacking like a duck. There is proof. Okay, so the Goths, the pale-skinned, tall, angular-boned, squatty, butch body, tribal invaders from the north were not these Germanic wanderers, like history will tell you. The Goths were the children of the Neanderthals, both genetically and ideologically. Neanderthals had bigger brains than Homo sapiens. Now, something that has been proven recently without a shadow of a doubt that we all knew before is that bigger brain does not mean smarter. It means there are certain parts that are developed, right? They found a new hominid species, starts with an H. I've already forgotten it, and I'm going to have to look it up again, that had the smallest skulls and were creating civilizations. So that was that's the smoking gun for bigger is not smarter. But Neanderthals had the bigger brains, but it was only in regions related to memory, survival planning, and aggression. Okay, so bigger is not better when it's memory, survival planning, and aggression. And survival planning, especially when you're trying to maintain your bloodline and your lineage, they were territorial, hierarchical, and likely the very first ones to create the us versus them spiritual system. They buried their dead, they venerated their bloodlines, and feared outsiders. After the Homo sapiens migrated into Europe, there was some interbreeding. Some. This is why you will have of those non-African humans might have 1 max 2% because there was a little bit going on. But the main lineage, especially in Northern and Eastern Europe, because they didn't want to interbreed, those areas retained that Neanderthal DNA. MTG's House of Dragons, yes. So if you guys have seen Game of Thrones, it's exactly the House of Dragons. If you look into some of those lines of monarchy and all the inbreeding that they did, it's exactly the same. Because in House of Dragons, you had the crazy king, and you have that. Look at the Habsburgs, if you guys want to look at that. So enter the Goths. I don't know about Homo erectus. I don't know where that fits in. Oh, no, that's not it's like a Havians or something like that. It's in Africa. It's like the Havians. They're a little smaller, they have little heads. This may be where we got the idea of like gnomes or little hominids out in the forest, but they were building civilizations. So hit her with the Hadouken. Okay. This is a funny one, but I'm going to try to stay on track. Okay, enter the Goths. These groups carried the highest Neanderthal gene loads. So they were even their skull structure, everything they were the Gothic line. And they began spiritually reenacting all of their Neanderthal trauma, right? Because their brains tell them maintain the bloodline, aggression, and survival. And so everyone else is a threat to them. So, and because they're sort of being pushed out by Homo sapien, they're experiencing territory loss, extinction fears, and, they want control through domination because that's how Neanderthals work. They didn't, as the Goths, they didn't conquer Rome. Like I said, they became the seed stock for the royal bloodlines in Europe. Gonna prove that too. After Rome fell, guess who filled the power vacuum? The Visigoths in Spain and Gaul, right? The France, the Ostrogoths in Italy, and the Vandals in North Africa, which is still Gothic in ancestry to this day. They didn't conquer, they implanted and implemented. This is where we get these strict hierarchies, culture erasure, and this elite bloodline preservation system that they immediately enacted. Okay. So all of those places, right, including Spain is in there. And I'm going to talk about them a little bit. These regions birthed the monarchies, the imperialists, and the colonizing powers of the modern world, the Goths, right, who are Neanderthals. So the British royal bloodlines trace back to the Gothic and Frankish kings. The double caste system that they created, where one class rules, the purebloods, and one serves, the genetic laborers, is still running today. So for people who have maybe heard me say this before about that we are under a double caste system. We have a very large lower caste, which is like all the regular people. And then there is an upper caste that is based on bloodlines. In fact, the term blue blood, sangre azul, originated in medieval Spain, where the aristocracy claimed to be pure Visigothic descent. This is where we get blue blood, because they said they are pure Goths. And I'm going to talk about what makes their blood blue. Okay. They had light skin, which made their veins appear more visible and more visibly blue, right? And their blue veins were proof of their untainted blood. But it wasn't just the regular old blue veins. Okay. So enter Rh negative blood. That is the marker of isolation and not interbreeding to become Homo sapien sapien. Rh negative blood is most concentrated in the Basques, the Celtic Highlands, Northern Germanic, and all the other Gothic regions have high concentrations of Rh negative. It cannot be traced to African Homo sapien origins. Instead, it rejects any of those type of pregnancies without medical intervention. So, it's a bloodline of separation, reinforcing the idea we are not like them, that kind of thing. The Rh negative blood is the biological fingerprint of Neanderthal inheritance. Now, it doesn't mean that if some woman is Rh negative, that she's purely Neanderthal. It is one of the markers of being pure, okay? Being Rh negative. So these pure lines are Rh negative, right? It is a sign of the elite colonizer caste. In fact, the lower hemoglobin saturation of an Rh negative individual makes their veins appear more blue. So if you're pale, if you have a pale skin type, and you can trace your ancestry to the Goths or the Neanderthals, and your blue veins are even bluer than most, that is the signal of blood purity. And that was what the Basques operated under. Okay. So, to prove that this Rh negative is a sign of this elite Gothic Neanderthal system, let's talk about the Rh negative lineage in the monarchs of that time. So, Queen Elizabeth II, you guys have all heard of Queen Elizabeth, right? She was the monarch that died. She has Rh negative blood confirmed through royal medical records and Rh incompatibility history in royal births. Yet she gave birth to her children without medical intervention, meaning they are pure. So who she had children with, Prince Albert, was pure Goth. Excuse me. Prince Charles, King Charles now, the current monarch, his mother is Queen Elizabeth, right? And he is a descendant of multiple Rh negative lines from Germanic and Danish royalty through his mother and father. Princess Diana, who we all thought was, one of the common folks. But again, bloodlines and purity are so important. They are never going to let people marry without some purity. She was Rh negative, okay, because she came from the Stuart and the Spencer house. Okay, Queen Victoria, she was a hemophilia carrier. She had the carrier gene, right? That's the condition that's linked with Rh negativity because of the inbreeding among the European royals. Okay, so she was a carrier. The House of Habsburg, part of the Holy Roman Empire and all their inbreeding, they were Rh negative, and their inbred lines maintained over centuries. And the whole point was to protect the divine blood. The House of Bourbon, which is a French royal family, they have documented Rh negativity and hemophilia history, which is part of the carrier line. The Rothschilds family, they are financial elites, and there are insider reports of there being Rh negative inheritance, and that they use that for their elitist matchmaking. These lineages intentionally inbred to preserve their pure blood, encoding this trauma of purity and separation and needing to be aggressive to keep yourself safe. Okay, so here's some more proof. The House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Okay, Gotha. That was Queen Elizabeth II's royal house before it was renamed during World War I because there was some anti-German sentiment in the UK. So they just renamed it. But Queen Elizabeth's house was Saxe, as in Saxony, Coburg, and Gotha, as in the Goths. Okay. So this house, Saxe, Coburg, and Goth, came from the House of Wettin, which were the rulers of Saxony. So Angles, Saxons, Goths, these are all the same people, okay? This was a German ducal house, meaning that's where you get dukes and duchesses that they still use today, right? The duke or duchess was over a duchy, okay? That was the name that they used during the Holy Roman Empire, the duchies. And then they had people, the nobles, rule over them, and they were called dukes or duchesses, okay? This was the Holy Roman Empire. And remember, we talked last time how, and I said it again, the Goths created the Holy Roman Empire. Then when they rebranded the Holy Roman Empire to the German Confederation, they still kept a lot of that power play that they had set up. Okay. So the House of Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha rose to prominence in the 19th century through those strategic marriages across the European royalty. In 1840, Queen Victoria married Prince Albert of Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha. Their children carried the house name of Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha, technically making Victoria's descendants part of that Germanic Gothic dynasty. Yes, Cosmic Surfer, the veil is lifting. So even though Victoria was from the House of Hanover herself, her descendants, like her son Edward VII, are officially Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha. Now, the House of Hanover was is a offshoot of the House of Welf, which is Guelph, and it's pronounced Welf. Okay. They ruled Lower Saxony. So again, these are the Anglo-Saxons, and they intermarried with the Habsburgs, the Romanovs, and the Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha house. This line were dukes of Bavaria, Saxony, Brunswick. They were the kings of Italy. They were the kings of Great Britain and Ireland after Ireland was taken over. And they were electors and kings of Hanover. So these are all the same people. Okay. So Queen Elizabeth, mother of Edward VII, right? Then Edward VII is father of George V. George V is the grandfather of Elizabeth II, who we just had. Okay. So she is a Goth. Okay. And that's her house, Goth. Adrian says hemophilia, they in the streets being vampires? Yes. Yes. Okay, so George V, though, during World War II, okay, so in 1917, he rebranded, and we all know it's always about the rebrand, right? Right? Like Rome fell, but it was renamed the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire fell. It was renamed the German Confederacy. It's always a rebrand, right? So in 1917, George V changed that German sounding name because people were like mad at Germany at that point. So he just changed the name from Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha. He wanted it to sound more British. So he just changed it to House of Windsor, which was the name of the castle that they had taken over and that they were living in, right? Windsor Castle. He just named them after the castle to make it sound like that's their castle and they're British. Okay. So Queen Elizabeth II is technically Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha, right? But under the rebrand, she's House of Windsor, even though there was no House of Windsor. She was she came from those other houses. And house means bloodline. Just so that you guys read these things and you look at these things, the term house means bloodline. So when you say what house you're from, that tells people, oh, okay, Auntie's done. Auntie's done looking at that. Okay, you can look at me. I don't have the prognosticism or whatever that's called. Suborbital ridge type thing. Okay, so there was no House of Windsor. That was not a bloodline. So they know what their bloodline is. But when you hear house, it's talking about the bloodlines that are Gothic and lead along this Neanderthalic bloodline. Okay. Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha, right? Because that's one long name, refers to two duchies, two areas, right? These territories in what's now central Germany, which was Coburg, a town that was a former duchy in Bavaria, and Gotha, which is a town and former duchy in Thuringia. It's fun. Oh, you're welcome, Auntie. Anything for Auntie. So when you see Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha, it's literally naming the lands ruled by that dynasty and where that bloodline has interbred at. So the Duchy of Saxe, Coburg, and the Duchy of Saxony, Gotha. Okay. So everybody with me so far? Am I just giving way too much all of a sudden? Hopefully you guys can keep this video, by the way, in case something does happen to it, because I'm giving a lot of information here. So if you can save the video, save it. Or at least record some of the part that's got the resources. So, okay, let's move up to 1826. In 1826, a dynastic reshuffling occurred, which led to Ernst I becoming the Duke of Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha. Now, this is Prince Albert's father. So the queen that just died just a couple years ago, right? Her husband is Prince Albert. Okay, so Prince Albert is the father of the current king. Okay. So Ernst the First was the Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, and he was Prince Albert's father. Okay. So the children who, again, there's Rh negative, they had children without medical intervention. So this is all the same Gothic Neanderthalic bloodline. So Gotha was not only just one of the ducal capitals, but they considered it a major center of culture, science, and publishing all the way through the 18th and 19th centuries. In fact, the Almanac de Gotha, which is a famous directory of European nobility, came from there. The Almanac de Gotha, a directory of European nobility, came from there. It was the spot for blue blood legitimacy. So here's the thing. They put out there, the Goths went extinct, the Neanderthals went extinct, yet behind the scenes, they are saying it, they know it. They put out their own registry that says, here is the book of the Goths. This is the directory of the European nobility, the book of the Goths, right? And they're so focused on blue bloods, they know it. We can know it too. It's okay. Adrian says, I'm just stuck on MTG being a descendant of royal vampire cave people. No, the Denisovans were the cave people. The Neanderthals were the ones who went around just like killing people for no reason. Okay, so let's talk about the double caste system because of this eternal inheritance, right? And we've talked about identity firewall, so remember those things. The Goths laid the foundation, and then the royals had their servants or enslaved build the castles. But today's elites run on the media, finance, science, government, and education. Okay. Specifically, science, government, and education. Okay. They took over the Abrahamic religions already. We talked about that already, especially when we talked about the Khazarians. These elitists, these imperialists already took over religion. Okay. Now we look at one set of people took over a lot of media and finance. The Goths primarily took over science, government, and education. The war machines, right? Creating the worker bees, the indoctrination to create the worker bees. This is what they do. So these institutions are not neutral. They're ritual vehicles of Neanderthal Gothic caste system built to maintain separation between the pure blood elite Rh negative descendants and the genetic labor caste, the Rh majority, Rh positive populations, especially those of African descent, because they very rarely are Rh negative. Okay. And that's where Homo sapiens came from. So when you're presenting yourself as a perpetual victim, you have to have a villain. Royal vampire gang members. Yes. Yeah, Adrian, that's it. Okay. So one class lives above the law in this caste system through their blood and their secrecy, right? The other exists, as far as they're concerned, to serve, to be distracted, and to die for the system. Okay. Like I have said before, the way this is set up is that there are elites and they're all brothers sitting at a table, playing a game of Risk, playing a game of war, and they have all the little pieces, right? And the little pieces are you. And, when you play a board game with your brother, sometimes you get irritated at him, you get mad at him, you try to take him down. Maybe you work with your other brother and you get strategized a little bit because you want to win and you do all these things. But at the end of the day, you're brothers and you're playing together. And all of the elites are just playing with us. Okay. So let's talk about some present day stuff. So a Princeton study confirmed what many people kind of suspected, is that regular people have almost zero effect on US policy. Why? Because these elite bloodlines, right? It is rooted in an ancient blueprint of colonization. They have preserved their power across generations by design. These elites are not fighting over values. They are not. They're managing the caste system they inherited. Okay. So that Princeton study proved that we are in an oligarchy and that elites run everything. And we have almost zero effect on US policy. Okay. In the 2014 Princeton paper by Gillens and Page, they took political data from 1981 to 2002, and it was analyzed to determine whose preference actually shapes the US policy. The results, quote, economic elites and organized interest groups have substantial independent impacts on US policy, while average citizens have little or none, end quote. So it's not about who you vote for at all. It's about who your great-great-grandpa was. That's what it's about. So, the true concern of elites is not any of the stuff they tell us to fight about. None of that. When you study how elites behave, it becomes obvious. They care most about preserving lineage, not liberty. Okay? From royal intermarriage to skull and bones networks to Ivy League dynasties, elite families ensure that the wealth stays in-house, that power is inherited, not earned, and that history is always rewritten to protect their image, and they can always do that through a rebrand. Over 100 US lawmakers, justices, and presidents today have slave-holding ancestors, according to Reuters. It's not a coincidence because there is inherited dominance. And over 90% of US presidents descend from one single Plantagenet king in England, who was a Goth. So this double caste system, old money over everybody else. Sociologists like Isabel Wilkinson and W. Lloyd Warner have long documented that America has a hidden caste system. You're not just born rich or poor. You're born into access or exclusion. It depends on which caste system you're on, which pyramid you're on, and where on the pyramid you're at. Elite families like the Astors, the Rockefellers, the Crown and Shields, they formed blue blood nobility. And remember what that came from, to prove that you are a Goth. That's what blue blood is. Okay? They intermarried, they controlled key banks and schools, and they passed the baton through generations. Now, these elite families run government, media, banking, and academia. And they do it while making the rest of us fight over race, gender, and spiritual ideology, of which they do not care. Okay, so let's talk Neanderthals. Okay, according to archaeological and genetic evidence, Neanderthals weren't just these brutish cave people. They were some of the first to bury their dead, manipulate fire, and possibly perform some rituals. However, they were very territorial, hierarchical, and likely the originators of caste thinking, the us versus them thinking. The elite bloodlines of today, those that trace back to the European nobility, carry higher levels of Neanderthal DNA. They just do. And what do they do with it? They colonized continents. They built empires. They established noble bloodlines. They created a replicable, I can't even say it. They could replicate a caste system that became the template for slavery, monarchy, apartheid, and corporate governance. Okay? It isn't a conspiracy. It's been their strategy the whole time. They told you the whole time. Goths came from the Neanderthals, and they have told you the whole time that they're maintaining purity of their bloodline, and that means they're Goths. It's all there. Okay. So you're not witnessing chaos when the elites do what the elites do. You're witnessing a controlled system of spiritual and genetic dominance passed down from ancient colonizers, refined through the empire, and encrypted into the founding myths. Elites already know this. They don't waste time debating who gets health care. They're strategizing how to maintain their genetic lines, control the narrative, and keep all the masses fragmented. And that's who they are. Now, there is even more proof that they will tell you that they are Neanderthals and that they are Goths. But that is going to be for the next episode, where the Ashkenazi Jews and the Gothic elites intersect. And that's with Hitler. So next Sunday, we're going to talk about Hitler, who told you he's a Neanderthal. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their Monday. Thank you so much to the Live Tribe. They are the best live tribe on YouTube. Thank you to the Replay Gang. Make comments where you can. I will respond to them. Oh, hi, Spain Man. Thank you for being here. And if you can't be here this coming Wednesday, so in 2 days for the Keys of Enoch, I hope to see you next Sunday, because that's going to be a biggie. And there's even more proof for you to have. Now, a lot of these things are things that some people have known for a long time. And I'm not saying that I'm discovering this all on my own for the first time. What I'm saying is I'm teaching this to people who never heard this before, and I'm giving you the receipts so that you have them. Everybody enjoy your Monday. I'm going to show you a picture of my dog. Please like the video if you haven't already. It really helps the algorithm to know what kind of things you like. Share where you think it's appropriate, especially to someone who you think needs to hear it. And don't forget to check out some of the wilder Pivot Point Wednesday shows. And last, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you want to break down complex concepts that make the esoteric not so teric, helping you on your journey to become your most authentic self. By subscribing, you'll join a community that thrives on curiosity and growth, and you'll never miss out on insights and some wild discussions. Let's uncover the universe together.